Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, November 17th, 2023, and this is episode 817 of Living Free in Tennessee. And it is a home. Oh, yeah. Okay, we have audio. For a second there, I'm like, did I unmute my mic? Because I keep doing that wrong. Anyway, we have a Homestead Happenings show today, and Tactical needs to mute his phone.
Hey, we're live.
Hey, we're live. That's right, guys. If you have any questions or anything as we go through this, just put the word question in all caps in the comments and I'll star them and work them into the show. This should be a conversation, so let's do that. We are streaming from the camper. Why are we streaming from the camper, Tactical?
Your house is destroyed right now.
Yeah, so my house is ripped up and the drywall guy's going to come sand the walls at some point today. I didn't know what time. And I didn't want to have sanding in the background. Plus, I know some of you are curious about the camper, the glamper that's being set up at the homestead. So here it is. We're sitting at the table. Tactical is uncomfortably close to me. He was pretty surly about getting this close to me for the live stream.
Tactical's just uncomfortable.
Are you an uncomfortable human being?
Yeah, I'd rather be sitting over there.
Okay. He looks mischievous now. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about our usual segment. So happy Friday, Martinson family. We are going to talk about livestock, harvest meals, the holler neighbors and community, and we're going to continue, we're going to do an update on what we're talking about now after the last week of just thinking about the big picture conversation we had last week. Welcome, Jen. And welcome, Tennessee Permaculture. Good to see you guys here. But we'll also answer any questions you have. So before I do that, I do want to thank our two show sponsors of today's show. And the first sponsor is Discount Mylar Bags. Discount Mylar Bags puts out a great product where they source things in bulk and then pass on the savings to you. But the really cool thing about Discount Mylar Bags is that they have on their website a list of resources on how to store food. And as we go into winter and you're storing food, then it's actually kind of a cool thing to look over once in a while. I look over it once in a while, and I've been storing food for 16 or 17 years now. Head over to discountmylarbags.com. Pack Rat, welcome to the live stream. And yes, Jen has a boyfriend with a kissy face. You guys are kind of funny in the comments. By the way, Jen has a boyfriend. Oh. Tactical unaware because he doesn't do social media at all. He's completely anti-Facebook. So I can say anything I want to about Tactical on Facebook that he'll never know. Right?
You might get ratted out by somebody.
I might get ratted out by somebody. Our second sponsor of today's show is John Pugliano of the Wealth Studying Podcast. Check out the Wealth Studying Podcast. It's just wealth studying like homesteading on any podcatcher, or go to investablewealth.com and he's got a podcast link there. You can go check that out. You can see other resources available on his site. I actually subscribe to his email and I really find that to be fascinating as well. But he's been a great supporter of the show since before we even had sponsors. And what I like about what he does is he shares decisions he's making and why he's doing it. He's got a really awesome podcast, Wealth Studying Podcast, over at investablewealth.com. With that, we're going to go straight into the show. Lazy Gardener has joined us. Strong Roots Resources. Happy Friday. Pack Rat. Congratulating Jen. I'm a little tongue-tied today. I don't know why, but you guys are going to get entertaining, Nicole. And I've got water instead of coffee because if I did a third cup of coffee today, you were going to get rocket fuel, Nicole, which nobody's ready for that except for maybe you because you've seen it a few times, right?
Yeah.
So funny. I just cleaned my camper and there's a leaf on the table right here that came in on the redneck. This is what happens.
Leaf.
How to get and keep.
It's a collection of seeds.
It's a collection. It is a collection of seeds.
It's all the seeds.
It's all the hitchhikers that were on him. It's like in a little pile on my table now.
Yeah.
This is what it's like to live in the proximity of a redneck. You get little hitchhikers on your camper table.
Yeah, they'll go in the fire eventually.
Yeah, unless he forgets them, and then you find a little pile of seeds later. Jen says, wait for my next surprise decision. Well, Jen, I can tell you that living in a camper is not terrible because I've lived in this camper for 3 weeks now.
Something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm learning a lot about it. We're going to do a show next week with the Unloose the Goose people who are nomads about just campers and camper living, and I'm all new to it, so it'll be a fun show for me. Our first segment of today's show is Forage. This is where we talk about what we're finding on the land, and what we're finding on the land is underground at this point here because most of the stuff has died back. So it's time to actually look at the Jerusalem artichokes and see if they're ready to harvest just in time for Thanksgiving, which is next week. And if they are ready to harvest, then I might have to add to the long text message chain of who's cooking what for Thanksgiving dinner and add a Jerusalem artichoke dish because that's just kind of fun, I think. Anyway, got any other forage for me, Tactical?
I'm finding lots of dead stuff, and I'm actually really enjoying it
Why?
because it's a lot easier to clear.
Yeah, he's been clearing some stuff. We'll talk about that later in the show. Next segment is livestock. This is where we talk about the critters on the farm. And we have a rooster in quarantine. Why is he in quarantine?
Putting it politely, he's a weakling.
Yeah, he's a wimp. And when I got the straight run of breast chickens, I ended up with 40,000 roosters and 6 hens. I might be exaggerating the rooster count, but it sure feels like 40,000 right now. And they're all at the age where they fight with each other. So this weekend, assuming that I am not 100% tiling my wood stove surround, my plan is to process 6 or 7 of them and just reduce the male population. But I found this one hiding like where the ramp comes down in the little corner because everybody was beating him up. So he got put in quarantine. He's also not going to be put back in the pasture. He's going to be one of the 6 that goes this weekend. 6 seems like a good number to start with.
Okay.
Yeah. But I might do more than 6.
Yeah, we'll see.
It depends on who I catch. I think tonight after dark, what I want to do is go into the coop and create mayhem and throw them in the crate for the night so they're separated and easy to catch.
That's a chicken tracker too.
Okay. Sounds good. So that's what's up with him. And the rest of the chickens are fine. It is time to add wood chips to the pasture. So we've got to get wood chips to get that done, or else it just goes scorched earth over there if you don't add like organic matter to the whole thing. We have a possibly pregnant ewe.
Yes.
That sounds weird when I say it while I'm looking at you. It means it's almost as if I accused you of being possibly pregnant. Are you pregnant?
No.
Are you 100% sure?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
Anyway,
not woke.
he's not woke. So we've changed how we're controlling when the sheep get pregnant, but we're in a window where we might have a lamb born around Christmas, and her udder does look uddery, which is about 6 weeks out, which would put us almost perfect timing for Christmas. So there's something about the lamb being born on Christmas seems fitting if it happens.
Yeah. I think she might be a little bit sooner than that, but I am trying to get all of them synced up so that they're giving birth around the same time.
Hey, I see that Jen's looking for mullein seeds, and we have a ton of them. You want some
Mhm.
mullein seeds? We'll send some with Nighthawk, who apparently is bringing you your dog, I heard. So I've got some like right behind me on a big spike.
Oh, yeah. I just found more in the pasture, too.
Yeah, so we got tons of mullein seeds. Mullein is great, and I like spreading the seeds all over the place. So that is fun. And then it looks like Tennessee permaculture is ankle deep in eggs. We are not ankle deep in eggs. So the next thing is the ducks are going to duck jail. We've been talking about this for weeks. Why haven't they gone to duck jail yet? Good morning, Facebook user.
Because I have had way too much going on to think about putting ducks in jail and trying to maintain that.
Are you Don Gorham or are you Amanda? Just curious who Facebook user is.
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong about who it is, but it was the word y'all. Dawn.
Dawn.
So there's so much going on. Oh, it's Dawn and Kathy. Hello. Welcome. It isn't Don Gorm. It's a different Don. It's a male Don. We were wrong. I admit when I'm wrong, right?
We could hope.
Okay. So it's been really busy in the house, and he has just been like doing maintenance on the livestock. And when you put the ducks in duck jail, lots of things can happen, so they need to be paid attention to more. So he's waiting until hopefully today, the last sanding of the drywall, and then I take over and start painting my little painting butt off. Um, After a deep clean of all the dust everywhere. And then the ducks can go to duck jail because we, unfortunately, Tennessee permaculture, are not covered up in eggs because ducks are pooping eggs all over the yard. And then I've only got 6 American breast chickens. I only got 1 egg from those 6 yesterday. So they're pikers or they're hiders. I'm not sure. I haven't done a deep search of the pasture. Every so often I find a clutch somewhere because they hide them. And I think they're hiding them because the boys are too boyish. There's too many boys.
No, it's about to change.
Yeah, that's totally about to change. The forage in the pastures for the sheep. So we've been really dry this fall. What's that mean for the sheep, Tactical?
We do not have a lot of grass growing.
Yep. No, not a lot of grass at all. And what we have is what would be referred to as field hay, a term I'd never heard of before until last year when somebody said, "Do you do the field hay method?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" Basically, the field hay method means you don't harvest the grass, you let it die, and then it kind of stores as dead grass in the pasture, and then you rotate your animals through.
Yeah, I didn't know it was called that either. I just knew to do it.
Yeah, we never read a book saying to do that, but it just makes sense when you observe the land and you're like, oh, there's still food there. We'll give them that food before we start supplementing with hay. Strong Roots Resources said he's already feeding his sheep hay. But how many more paddocks do we have before the field hay's gone? He's counting on his fingers. Apparently it's more than 2.
About 8.
About 8 more. So we'll keep rotating them through those 8. They're on a paddock from 3 to 7 days. And then once that's done, it's hay feeding. So what's that transition look like?
They start getting hay. I like to keep things simple.
They start getting hay. What about minerals?
Probably up their minerals a little bit. But I mean, other than that, I mean, they're basically already on hay.
Yeah. Then last week I told you about the bunnies. We had one bunny give birth to one bunny, and the other one, because we didn't have the nesting box in there, and the other one, we didn't know how many she had. The one bunny who gave birth to one bunny, apparently we gave her the emergency nesting box when we realized she had a baby in there, and she has 3. So she was probably in the process of giving birth when that happened. And then the other one has at least 3. So this is actually a light litter. We've gotten between 8 and 12 bunnies per bunny. Mm-hmm. And I think they may have just been a little stressed with coming out of the hot summer. I'm not sure why it happened. We're going to give them some extra time between litters and see how that is. But they had not been bred all summer, so I'm not sure what was up. But so we have a light batch of bunnies coming in. And the Virginia Bushcrafter asks, are you guys anywhere near Highway 40? That's a beautiful drive through the mountains. A lot of bug out places if you can deal with the bears. We're off of 40 by about 12 miles, but we're not in East Tennessee. We're in Middle Tennessee.
Interstate 40, not Highway 40.
Oh.
I don't even know where Highway 40 is.
Okay, I assumed they meant I-40.
Maybe they do.
Yeah, maybe they do. Well, and there is a beautiful drive through the mountains on I-40.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm assuming you mean Interstate 40. Let me know if you're wrong. But yeah, we're off the interstate. I've met people at the rest area with coffee orders before, like truck drivers coming through who listen to me and were like, I want your coffee, but you can't mail it to me because I'm in a truck. And I'm like, well, if you're driving through on 40 for Christmas deliveries, then I can meet you at the Buffalo Valley rest area and we could do a Homestead drug deal in the parking lot. One of my favorite things to do. Good morning, Loco. Good to see you. Okay, next up, harvest meals. We've been eating so many from scratch meals this week, haven't we? What did we have for dinner last night? Chinese food. Why?
Because neither of us were going to cook anything.
Oh, but what was not open that was supposed to be open?
Mexican place.
We were going to order in tacos, which is not keto at all. and he was going to have what? Fajitas,
I
which,
don't even
as
remember
long as you
what
don't
it
eat
is.
the side dishes, is ketovore. It's keto friendly. It's basically a pile of meat with some peppers.
I don't know.
I called and there was no phone answering, and either their phone was out, or they were really busy and couldn't answer the phone, or for some reason they were unexpectedly closed on a Wednesday night, even though they are supposed to be open on a Wednesday night. I'm actually going to go in and double check. I know the hours because I had planned all week that night would be Mexican food. I mean, Thursday night. Sorry. What day of the week is it? So I know they're supposed to be open on Thursday. I double checked their hours. I was like, well, never mind. So then I called in Chinese food. So that was our first harvest meal. It has nothing to do with harvest. Yeah, nothing to do with harvest. But other than that, I've done pretty well. The big day of sanding was supposed to be on Wednesday this week. And so knowing that happened, we packed up the rest of everything that was still in my kitchen pretty much that wasn't in a closed cabinet and put it outside. And I put the sous vide in the camper in the sink because it fits, like the little container I have for sous vide fits in the sink, and there's a plug right there. And I had prepackaged pork chops, so I put those at 165 to cook. And then my side dish plan was a salad, right? Yeah, it was a salad.
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
No.
Yeah. He doesn't remember what he ate 2 days ago because he's got short-term memory issues, and it has nothing to do with pot. He's laughing at me now. So I planned to do that, and then the person doing the drywall had one of their animals got a broken leg, and he went to the vet with the animal instead of coming over. And this is how Homestead like contracting works, is sometimes the contractors who are also homesteaders have homesteady things happen, and in this case that's what happened. So he didn't show up, and I was like, well, I'll cook in the camper anyway. Like I had the salad all pre-staged and ran the sous vide here. And what was interesting is my camper was too warm all day well, not all day, but from the time I started cooking Wednesday.
Yeah, and then there was lots of complaining. I can't figure out why the camper is so warm.
When I took the pork chops out, I was like, oh wait, there's heat emanating from the sous vide. So it turns out that in the right conditions, you can heat your camper with the crock pot and the sous vide, just for the record. Also, the light bulbs keep it warm enough here when it's not horribly cold out, because there are still incandescent bulbs in this camper. They're not all the LED ones. So I do technically have a heater in here, and I do need it when it gets below, when it gets cold. But it's actually been not that hard to keep the camper fairly warm, which is good because my house is cold AF.
Yeah.
It's very cold. And I'm looking forward to getting the hearth back in and the wood stove back in and a fire in the wood stove and heat that puppy up, because even with the electric heaters, I'm just freezing in there. It's not like unsafe freezing, but it's uncomfortable freezing when you're used to having a wood stove.
Yeah.
So are people supposed to remember what they had for meals 2 days ago? I mean, I cook, so I know. But that sous vide's really been a good tool for me through this, and the crock pot, just because then I don't like this. My stove is wrapped in plastic right now in the house. And then the next thing that happens with my stove is it gets taken out and put outside when I do the floor. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah, and then when you get a sous vide, you start finding other uses other than cooking for it, because it's awesome for lots of things.
What's it awesome for?
The last thing I used it for was to heat pine tar up to 140 degrees so I could apply it to wood posts.
I didn't even know he had a sous vide until he told me there was one at his house. Beth Emily says she switches out to incandescents in the winter for heat. Mm-hmm. They're illegal now. Illegal light bulbs. Yeah, the person meant Virginia Bushcrafter meant I-40, Tennessee to Arkansas. Yep, it's a nice drive. I am not in East Tennessee though, so the mountain part that you're talking about is not what goes by me. Sous vide for making yogurt from Jen.
Would be classified as foothills, right?
We're the foothills to the Cumberland Plateau.
Yeah.
So we're on the way up to the Cumberland Plateau, so it is a little hilly, and then it gets flat, and then you get the foothills to the Smokies, and then you're in the Smokies, and then you're through the Smokies, and that's I-40. Yep.
And on the note of yogurt, somebody was also complaining about trying to keep the cheese at a certain temperature for an extended period of time and having to turn the stove on and off. And it's, why don't you use the sous vide? Because it keeps it at the same temperature.
Yep. Beth Emily is finding incandescent bulbs at Dollar General for those of you who are looking for some. I will end up working through I bet there's going to be a loophole for how to buy incandescent bulbs. Like, what first happened is they started calling them Edison bulbs, and then they were like for specialty lamps, and that may still exist as a loophole.
Worst case scenario, the Chinese don't care. The Chinese will continue making them, and there'll just be a black market for them in the U.S.
Pack Rat says, leave it to the guy to find off-prescription non-food uses for the sous vide. It also is really good at heating the washing water. I've used it for keeping water warm during a pig processing workshop where it was 20 degrees outside, so our hands kept getting cold, and then you'd wash your hands.
Yeah.
And then, that worked. It was on an off-grid farm, and the person who came up with that idea was also a dude, because Chef Brett's the one who set that up. So Chef Brett did that. And then also heating water for washing when we do the wash station at the spring workshop.
Yeah. Like I said, you'll find all sorts of
there's also like, I need warm water. Yeah, it's done. And I think from a camping, like outfitting the camper standpoint, the sous vide does not weigh very much, but it does use a fair amount of power.
Yeah, I think that was your light issue the other day.
Yeah, my lights were flickering while the sous vide was running, so that means I'm probably not running the sous vide when I am running off battery bank.
Yeah.
So, do you run off battery bank with your sous vide in the cabin? Okay. Yeah, so that's more of a, but it's so lightweight and so easy to cook with. It's kind of like, I could see if I know I'm going somewhere with hookups for the camper, I might do that. I don't know. Just thoughts on the camper. You guys will get interspersed thoughts on the camper today because we're coming to you from the Glamper at the Holler Homestead. This camper needs a name. I think we need to run like a contest for the camper name. Sure. He doesn't care at all. Do you care about the camper at all?
Kind of.
What's that mean?
Well, I mean, I don't have to listen to you complain about like living in your house with all the dust or driving back and forth to an Airbnb or something. But other than that, like,
Do you think it's going to be cool to have a glamping site here?
Sure.
They're going to be sad that there are people here?
It will probably be irritating.
The Holler chassis. Sounds like a dude submission. So we also have perpetual bone broth going. Yesterday, I took it straight out of the crock pot without cooling it first, and it tasted bad. Why? Too much fat. Like, I had put a bunch of pork in there, and so I put it in the fridge so I can harden the fat, take the fat off the top, and then we'll start having a daily cup of bone broth, probably right after this. So that's, I think nutritionally it's a good idea. Plus, I don't cook with bone broth much because most of the soups and stews I make have a bone-in piece of meat, which is basically making the bone broth for a soup or stew. And that's going well. And then the beef processing time is upon us. So I've got a half cow that I bought from Don Gorham, and the whole cow that I'm getting here locally is at the butcher now. I think it's going to be about $4 a pound for the butchered meat. I'm not sure yet. I'll have that calculation when I know how many pounds I get from it. So I'm just based on 60% of hanging weight means I'll get about 470 pounds. I think I'll be $2,000 or less into the whole animal by the time it's done. And I'm waiting for the call from the butcher. But what this means is, speaking of bone broth, it's time to make the beef bone broth because I get these bags of beef bones and they take up space in the freezer. And I just get the big roasting oven out and I simmer those off at a low enough temperature that it takes a little time, so it doesn't, like, if you go too hot, then it it ends up kind of making a burnt flavor in there, and I don't like that. I did that one year. And I've got parsley coming off the aquaponics system, so that'll go in there with some onions. I keep it pretty simple, and then I can that. So I will actually can that bone broth. I still have beef bone broth we didn't use up from last year because I was doing the thing I always tell you not to do with my canned goods, and I was eking out the beef because I really like the beef bone broth best. That is a tongue twister after I say it. So that'll be happening soon. I'm not sure when and where. I might bring the roasting oven in here on Saturday night because it's going to be cold Saturday night, and I'm pretty sure that my wood stove won't be back in the house yet Saturday night. And then I can just run the roasting oven here all night, and it will help with heating the camper. But if I do that, then I have a problem where if I need the heater, I can't have them both plugged in at the same time. So I need to think about how that's going to work. I might actually spend some time under the kitchen sink in here looking at the breakers and seeing if I have 2 circuits of plugs or if it's just all on one. Pack Rat says, Chris from Honeysuckle Farm showed us how to break down pork primals at the Gorham Farm this week. Much appreciated. Yeah, that looked like a really fun class. It looked like a really fun class. I am actually on the cow thinking of telling the butcher not to cut it up as much as I usually do and have bigger cuts of meat that we cure when we get here, because I've like getting the whole eye of round instead of in individual roasts. It will also avoid the 2-pound roast challenge.
You know, I was about to say, I don't know what you call that, single redneck serving roast.
It was pretty funny. The processor reached out to me and was like, I saw that he's like, I did it that size because that's what most people want. And I was like, I was not complaining about your job butchering. Like, they did a great job butchering this cow. The cuts are really straight. It's like the flavor's really good. So it was aged really well. And when I said, like, they ask you, how many steaks do you put per package? And I'm like, 2 per package, right? Because then I can do 2 or 4 easily, depending on how many people are there. And so then one would extrapolate from that, we are packaging 4 sets of 2 people, not realizing that he is 3 people in one person. So, like, for the roast, we want 4 people roasts. Yeah. And then we're keto, so we eat a lot more meat volume at the meal than a person who maybe lightly has some roast and then has like 7 side dishes of other things. So I did manage to stretch that roast out so that he did not eat the shepherd's pie as well. Speaking of which, guess what's for breakfast today?
Okay.
Shepherd's pie. There's 1 serving of shepherd's pie left, and it's a squash-based one instead of potato. I took one of our garden squashes that I left it out after the freeze, so like part of it was starting to mold, so I cut that off, and then I baked, or not baked, I roasted the rest, so that's basically baked, and then use that in the shepherd's pie. And what did you think of that approach instead of potatoes?
I liked it.
Yeah? Did you like it the same as or better than potatoes or less than potatoes?
I probably like it better, but then again, I like squash, so.
Yeah, we're friends because of squash.
Yep.
That's 100% true. So that's all the stuff we're doing with the harvest meals. Next up, we have the segment about holler neighbors and community. And your submission here was the GSD at Brian's. What's up with that?
I have no idea.
Why not?
Because I've got too much other stuff going here, so I wasn't going. So I've like seen them texting about it, and I just really haven't paid that much attention.
Yeah. Anyway, here's what's happening. There is an HVAC switch out happening at Brian's, and I think he's already got all the RSVPs he needs. But it's something that he usually does a GSD weekend the last weekend of October, and that was basically Jack's workshop was in the way of that. Jack Spirko's workshop. So he decided he just wasn't going to do a GSD this year, and then Nighthawk's like, come on, man, choose a weekend in November. Let's get this done. and it had to, like, all the stars had to align with like a truck to bring the unit out to him. Nighthawk does HVAC for a living, so like there's some knowledge there. And so it all came together on this weekend, and they are getting together, switching out the HVAC. I understand that um, Brian toured bourbon region of Kentucky, so there's probably a tasting on Saturday night. I think they're going to have a really fun time. And at the end of it, he ends up with a new HVAC install without having to go through a company, and done right because
Yeah.
we have an HVAC person. I bring it up because what happens over time as you have a GSD community is you end up attracting doers, and you end up with people with skills. And then that makes everything easier. Like this construction job I'm doing at my house right now has been a lot easier because of the people in our community. Because like 10 years ago, I didn't know a way to get drywall done properly. And so then I had to do what you do, which is you go get competing bids, you make your best choice, you hire somebody, and more often than not, I ended up with somebody with an alcohol problem, or I ended up with somebody who just did a crappy job. I was lucky when I first moved here that right down the road lived a contractor who was epically good at drywall. He did the drywall in the cabin, and he would get stoned, blast classic rock, put his drywall stilts on, and just zone out for the whole day, making everything very precise. Unfortunately, he passed away. So when he passed away, I did not have drywall resources after that. Unfortunately. But now the drywall got hung and is done. And then a second person who I didn't realize worked in this field, but who kind of follows me on Facebook, reached out, and I was like, "Well, if you do drywall mud, come on out." And he's been doing a really good job. So we're excited about that, and it's kind of nice to have somebody who lives close working on that. The other thing is, so I've only been to see the sheep twice this week, and they're way up the steep hill, and I have a fear of four-wheeling down steep hills. Right?
Yeah.
It's better than it was. I've been working on it. So on the homestead, you have fears. And so I've done a lot of walking because of this fear, up and down hills. And this summer, I started working on the lower part of the hill, which is less steep than the upper part of the hill. And I'm able to ride down the hill, except for when I'm feeling ADHD overwhelm. I don't do it because my brain feels foggy when that happens, and I'm afraid I'll make a stupid decision and roll the four-wheeler. Right?
Think. You have the way more stable four-wheeler. This four-wheeler has tires. Like, the tires on the front of this four-wheeler are the same rims that go on the back because I wanted to widen the stance so that it's more stable on the hill. That being said, even I hit an oh shit moment yesterday.
What? Tell us about that.
I was I was towards the very top of the hill where it goes, from like this to like this, and was basically going to trample a path down where I'm going to run the fence so it's easier with the weed eater, and did not realize there was a tree about that big around, which I cannot plow over with the four-wheeler, especially at that steep of a grade. So I had to stop. And then once I was stopped, it's like, well, what now? Fortunately, I was able to stop because there's some spots on that hill where, yes, if you're not going up, you will be going down. This was not quite that steep, but it was still like I just sat there on the brakes for a minute to assess and be like, okay, I can ease off, come down a little bit, and then hopefully turn around, which I was able to do.
So here's the deal. I went into this with a fear of rolling things on steep hills. And then Tactical and Nighthawk drove up that pasture years ago, and he broke how many ribs?
Just one.
What? How did you break your ribs?
By rolling the four-wheeler in a really bad situation. That was one of those situations where you're going up, looking at the fence line, and then you finally look up and realize that it's steep and it's just getting steeper and there's nowhere to go. And so I let off the throttle and the four-wheeler stalled. So now I have no power, and there was two of us on the four-wheeler, so that just did not end well.
So I don't know where I would have gotten this strange fear of rolling the four-wheeler on a steep hill at that particular pasture. Jen's like, just one. So I've worked on it, but so there's two four-wheelers. One of them's four-wheel drive, one is not. When I'm going up the pasture, I go on the one that's not, which apparently is more stable according to rednecks. And I believe rednecks on this one. So that was not a sarcastic statement. But I drive up to where I'm comfortable, and then I jump on the four-wheeler with him and go up the rest of the way. And I did that this week. I even rode down one time with you.
Yeah.
Which was crazy. I'm actually glad I didn't ride down with you the first time, though, because you slid on all four wheels for like half the hill.
That stopped.
It's my fault. It's always my fault. There was a dead-looking white thing in the pasture. I wanted to make sure it wasn't a baby sheep, also known as a lamb. It was a white rabbit, just for the record. I was like, we need to look at this. So, but I saw something on the way down the hill the second time. You know what I saw?
A live baby sheep?
A 10-point buck. Tell us about the 10-point buck.
The infamous 10-point buck that somebody wants to bag and can't.
So, our friend, this is why this is in the Holler Neighbors / community. Our friend down the road, Steve Eversole, has spent days trying to get this particular 10-point buck. He has done research for getting its head mounted. He has had one shot that he was able to take at it with his crossbow, because it was bow season, after waiting all dang weekend, like all day Saturday, all day Sunday. Sun's about to set. There it is. I've got the shot. And crossbow failed. Buck ran off. So we're driving down the hill this week, and I'm like, and I know he's been trying to get this buck last weekend. And I'm like, should we tell Steve what we just saw? Like, the buck was coming over to hang out with the sheep.
I usually do.
Yeah. So we keep sharing sightings of the 10-point buck. And Steve told me the other day, he's like, I know what's going to happen. The guys who hunt next door to you are going to get here, and on Thanksgiving morning, they're going to shoot that buck, and I'm going to be pissed. Because he's been like on it the whole time. So we've been razzing him a lot about that. It's been kind of fun going back and forth.
I'll have to add that to the list of things, because every time I see it, it's like, yeah, I saw him down by the creek. He was in the watercress patch, or he was over here, just hanging out doing whatever, and be like, yeah, I saw him up over on Bill's place.
On Bill's place. Tackrat says the in-laws have hills and a cranky stalling side by side. I'm with you, Tack and Nicole. Packrat says deer hunting with rifle opens tomorrow. Yeah, Steve's super stoked about that too. He has invested a lot of his time trying to get this buck. He has gotten, I think, one or two other deer because he just decided it was time to put meat in the fridge. But he really wants that buck. He really, really, really wants that buck. There's also been a lot of floating animal care as different neighbors are leaving town. Tactical and Steve have helped with Nighthawk's dog. Nighthawk's been off taking care of other GSD projects. Since Nighthawk went to the GSD for Mike last weekend, and I think he's going to be at Brian's this weekend. So I'm pretty sure there's some dog care that needed again.
Yep.
And then there will probably be dog care needed when Ginger goes home to Jenny.
Yep.
Jenny, who's stoked to get her dog back.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm just glad we could watch her for you. I watched a video about adding orange Kool-Aid into feeders to encourage them to come around. Yeah, so I don't know we're supposed to have feeders for deer, so if that was a thing, I don't think it would be a thing here.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know the Tennessee laws on that.
yeah. However, sometimes it's really nice to plant like turnip greens
Yeah.
because you want to grow turnip greens, and you know who else likes turnip greens? Lots of things like
including
turnip greens.
deer.
Yeah. Jen says she's super stoked to get her dog back. Hey, Rape here. Welcome to the live stream. Do you guys like it better when I'm more interactive with y'all in the comments? I'm just curious because I was like, I'll try that today and see how it goes. And I have my glasses on so I can kind of see. Oh man, okay. So I got an MRI yesterday, and it was the most horrible thing ever. No, it wasn't. But here's the thing: they give you this form that tells you, like, if they put the contrast in you, this is what, like, all the side effects possible with this contrast. It's in a 6-point freaking font. So I get this paper and I don't have my glasses and I'm like, wow, that's blurry. And I put my glasses on. I'm like, I still can't read that. And I told the lady, I'm like, I can't read this form to give you consent or not give you consent because it's in 6-point font at an imaging center that caters to sick and old people, basically. Old people, stereotypically, their sight goes too. Like, why would you do that? Like, the technician had to come read it to me because they didn't have the capacity to print this out in a reason, like 9-point probably would have been fine for me. 6-point. It might have been less than 6-point. Like, it was small.
Gotta read the fine print.
I was just reminded of that story because I can actually see your comments on my computer because I have my glasses on and they're not too smudgy today. So, but I'm going to talk Monday about what the MRI experience was like in case anybody here has not had one and ends up getting one, because I needed to know some things in advance about that experience to get through it more successfully and not have the panic attack I had in the tube. And so I'm going to tell my story so those of you who hear the story know, because I think if I ever have to get one again, I don't think it'll be as bad because I've done it now. But like, it was the not knowing what to expect and it being a completely new experience that was like particularly difficult for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't like his either.
I had a far worse experience than she did.
A Ray Pierre asks, did they find a metal plate in your head? You know, that was one of my fears. I'm like, what if I do have a metal shard in my eye and I don't know it? Now I know I don't. But can you even imagine what that would be like? Yeah. Oh, Packrat says you can put corn out for your cows, but you cannot put them out for deer. Let's see. I said absolutely zero about luring for hunting. Just maybe you want to see them. Yeah, Jen says I should have called her. Yeah, I didn't know I needed to know. Well, the other thing is I didn't know they wouldn't orient you there because in the like late 90s, early 2000s, I worked at a language like center and we did cultural training and language training and interpretation. And we would schedule language interpreters to go with people to their MRIs to orient them on the way in. And one of the things they did as orientation was explain that you have to stay still and all of the things. Like, I didn't know if I could, if I had, do I have to leave my eyes closed? Can I have them open? Like, I didn't know anything. And I feel like a 2-minute explanation of what it was like from the staff would have really helped me. But then they're like doing it every day and it's second hand to them. And half the time they have people who've done it before. So I don't know. It's almost like I needed a checkbox saying I also needed to know how much time it would take. Because then I'm like, okay, because I had music on, right? And I could gauge by how many songs about how much longer I had and how long I had to like not hyperventilate. But I didn't hyperventilate. I started singing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and then the technician came over and asked me if I was okay. I didn't know he could hear me, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm just trying not to hyperventilate. I'm just humming." So typical. A. Rapier says, I had to get an MRI for my ankle and had to go all the way in the tube and found out I'm claustrophobic during the stand. Yeah. 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 There's that too. And they try to make them so you don't feel claustrophobic. Like they've put light in there. They have air blowing on your face. Like they know. They know. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to. I just have to look at my notes real quick, guys, because I went off on the MRI story. Yeah, we got everything there. Okay, so now it's time for the discussion. Wait, do you want to do infrastructure first? We need to go to Woodchick Mecca, and I need to plant the garlic, and that's going to happen this weekend if I don't get to do the tile on my stove. And if I do get to do the tile on my stove, then I'm going to do the tile on my stove. But today I'm planning to fork the place where the garlic goes before the rain comes, so it can rain on that, and then, yeah. Because garlic in by Thanksgiving is my goal. And Thanksgiving is 6 days away. Just in case anybody's counting. Oh, for those of you who need it, today's your reminder to pull your 20-pound or higher turkey out of the freezer and put it in your fridge to defrost if it's in the freezer. If you have a smaller turkey, you have a day or two before you need to take it out. It's better to cook them when they're fully defrosted. I'm taking mine out today, and then it's going to get handed off to somebody else because we're eating Thanksgiving dinner at Trisha's because my house is ripped up. And while we could like scramble and get it all ready for Thanksgiving, we are not going to do that to ourselves. We are not going to do that to ourselves. Just, I would be still like doing the final, like, don't walk on the floor yet. It's still got to dry. It's got to cure. Yeah. So we're,
Yeah, just no.
No. So when she was like, we could do it here, I'm like, we're doing it there. Oh, we are doing it there. And we have started the group chat about who's cooking what.
Thank God I'm not in that. That's what I needed, another group chat.
Okay. So last week we talked about like, what if I got $1.2 million for the hauler? Would it make sense to sell it and get a different property? And would Tactical come with me or not? And then if he did, like, what would we do with that? And then we kind of leveraged that into, well, what's that mean for staying in the hauler? Because I don't actually think I can get $1.2 million for the hauler, but it was sort of sparked by a house being listed for $529,000 on this road. Which shockingly, I drove by it yesterday, and there is not an under contract sign on the for sale sign.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to sell it that much.
Jen, I have your question mark for after we do this. And yes, you're welcome for the turkey reminder, AR. So now we've had a week to percolate on it, and we've had a couple other discussions since then.
Yeah.
So one thing I discussed was, like, he works really hard on the homestead. And so, like, looking at end of life stuff, maybe co-ownership and some other things. So we're kind of navigating that right now. And I don't know where we are with that, but
yeah, I don't either.
That's how the conversation is like. I'm like, should we think about me selling you the hauler? But then it has to come back to me if you find a girlfriend and move away. Because, you know.
Yeah.
You can't just sell your half to somebody I don't like.
Yeah. And so then I've also been like kind of scouting around. Not that I don't already kind of know the area, but like specifically going back and looking, okay, the property line should be roughly about here for this piece of property. If we're able to get it, we can put pasture over there, harvest some timber over here, maybe chunk off 5 acres for somebody else in the community to build, a cabin out here. Just the different things that we could actually do with a piece of property if we're able to get it.
Yeah, and so basically the context for that is we're starting to reach out to people who own property that abuts mine who aren't doing anything with it and seeing if they want to sell 10 acres or all of it and expand the footprint that's directly connected to the hauler. And if we can do it in a way that it can be, like, we can add a couple of plots, like 5-acre plots for people from the community who want to buy into the hauler, then that could be really cool too. It's your turn to talk.
Okay. Can only sit here for so much longer.
I know. We're close.
But then I've also been looking at like with the setup that we have here now, like, do we leave this building the way it is? Do we convert this over? If this, then that. So one of the considerations is I could build a cabin the way that I would want to build a cabin. Where would that be? Because being where I'm at right now, I've got, immediate access to ducks, rabbits, fairly close access to the chickens. So usually I'm topping rabbit food up while I'm having my cup of coffee in the morning. So how would that play into everything? And then, kind of assessing like the workshop building should stay the workshop building, but it needs some work. This is what it needs. This is the possibilities of what we could do. So I've been kind of looking at all of that, and then that also kind of plays into some of the long-term infrastructure with, like, we could stand to dig a trench from the pump house up to the roasting shack for a couple of things, and it's like, okay, if we're going to do that, then we may as well do this too. So
Yeah, Pack Rat says zone 1 and 2 would change shape for sure if you change locations. Yeah.
and even even at that, it's like, not talking about like 5 acres away. It's like, instead of being, whatever it is, 27 yards from door to door, it'll be more like 50.
Yeah. Oh,
But
and
that's
it's also,
still,
instead of being east of me, he would be north of me.
yeah. So it's not a huge change, but it is enough of a change that zone 1 and zone 2 are definitely going to.
And I think a reason it would be fun on your homestead to have a conversation like this, like the money is not an object. What would happen if we had a whole new kind of piece of land? What characteristics would we want in that? How would that link to our future goals? And then what does that mean for what we have now? Is that I think the idea to turn where tactical is living into a training center has never been on the table, because in my head that was a 2-bedroom cabin with a kitchen and a bathroom.
Yeah.
And it's where people live. It was an Airbnb for a while. And so because of that parameter, it didn't occur to me I could just bust out the walls and have a decent sized training center. And I can even extend out, like, he doesn't know this, but there's design in my head about extending the roof out over the cement area and having a garage door on that side, so it just opens out into covered open air area on that side, and really do some interesting things there. And it's already off grid, so that would be kind of a fun little example of how you can do things off grid. So what has changed is, if money is being invested, the workshop building, which is where like carpentry happens and storage happens, it's just bumped up on the priority list a bit. And then the second thing is, I was sort of thinking, like, what would it look like if Tactical built his own cabin the way he wants it on the property? Like, that's also up on the priority list. Because before that can be turned into a training center, he has to have a place to live. And then apparently he just told me it's going to take him 2 years to build this place because he needs to age Douglas fir.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody's listening and has access to Douglas fir posts that are already aged, you should reach out to me. Even if I have to transport them from Oregon or Montana. I'm just saying. How would you build your cabin so people understand what you're looking for?
I'm basically looking at putting something in the wash, and the wash would actually go underneath part of the house. So you'd have like a little arch going over, and then it would be timber frame. The interior walls would be cedar plank. Floor would probably be cedar plank or leveled concrete, one or the other. Haven't decided. And then the hope would be to have at least a small basement ish kind of a thing that would be
Not just an
built.
underhouse.
No, it would be kind of built into the side of the hill.
That was for you,
So
Alyssa.
one wall would be exposed to the actual house, and then everything else would be underground.
So you're looking for Douglas fir poles for your construction for the framing.
Mm-hmm.
How many? He has to count in his head again. Here's the thing about how his brain works. There's an actual architectural drawing in his brain that he is looking at right now. How many?
Be 8 for post plus the cross beams.
So 8 for posts plus the cross beams. How big around?
Preferably 10 to 12 inch.
So big trees. And how tall?
That depends on the overall design, which isn't set yet.
How long do they have to age for, and how do you age them?
I would prefer air dried, and air dried for at least 6 months to a year.
Okay. Packrat says, is this like a Mike Euler underground house book type of building?
I have no idea what that is.
Okay. I do. I've actually seen the book.
Oh.
So is it going to be underground with terrain on top, or is it just...
No?
Okay.
It would be... it would look like part of the house has a cinder block foundation, but that would actually be like a full-on basement when you go inside of it. It'll probably only be, like 8 feet wide, and maybe 15 or 20 feet long or something like that, but enough that, some of the infrastructure can go into that, and you also have a root cellar-ish kind of a place and whatnot.
Yeah, Jen's been thinking of something similar for house design. A. Ray Pierce says, if money was no object, more land, 1 bedroom bigger house with a basement, large outbuilding, and cross fencing. So with that in mind, AR, even though you're leaving, what steps do you need to get there? Because then that's like add a bedroom to your house, put an outbuilding in, and think about how you can leverage what you have to get the cross fencing done. And I say that like it's easy, and I know it's not, but that's a lot of how we've been approaching stuff here. Is it's like, okay, I want a pool and an extra room in my house, but the reason I want the extra room in my house is because I want a dedicated studio space / office, and I want my mom to be able to be here in her own place because she lives in my office when she's here. And so with that in mind, do I really need that, or do I need to reconfigure the space I have, or, what does that look like? And right now we've just reconfigured the space I have because that's what there was budget for. And then for him, I'm asking this about the beams because if he can get building sooner than 6 months from now, that can happen faster. The event center can happen faster, and everything flows together. And if it can't happen, it doesn't happen. But it's, definitely worth axing. That was for you, Sarah. That's a whole nother thing. In Tornado Tennessee, in Tornado Territory, I'm very interested in earth-sheltered basement, plus cheaper to heat and cool potentially. Yeah. So my house is underground halfway, and I don't love it that way for a number of reasons. One is humidity control, and also it's dark. So I can see like the value of having an underground house for insulation, but I don't like living in dark spaces terribly much. And a cave is a cave is a cave, and there's not a lot you're going to do about natural light in a cave. The wafatis that I saw in Montana, which are built into the earth, which I don't know how they go through a tornado, but I imagine that they are better for tornadoes, had light coming in on both sides, so that was lighter. And then a friend of mine in Texas built a dome home, and the shape of the dome home is very resistant to tornadic behavior. So I would also look at what like dome homes can bring you if light is an issue for you. Okay. A. Ray Pierce says, is it easier to subdivide large properties out there? Here they make you jump through hoops. It depends on your county. Right now, my county will let us subdivide 5 acres without, if it's not in the city limits, up, 5-acre or larger parcels without going through a county review. I think that's going to change over time. And that's actually part of why I want to get stuff. I want to get subdivisions done. It's $50 per subdivision now here, by the way. When I did it the last month, you could do it for free at another property. Once that's done, then at least they exist as separate tax numbers, and I don't have to go through additional hoops later.
Well,
But the other thing is, at some point, our community may need to think in this area may need to think about getting people on county commissions and pushing back on the smart growth agenda, because all of this stuff that happens with the zoning and the land use planning comes from the smart growth agenda, and we've convinced people who are anti-smart growth that it's not smart growth to have county commissions that are putting in zoning, but that's a lie. It's a total lie. It's part of the whole process of taking control of the rural properties and pushing people off them. And you may wonder how like controlling subdividing does that. It does that. Go look at Oregon. You cannot afford to be a farmer in Oregon very easily. Jen says, I might need a frugal side dish recipe to take to Thanksgiving. Jen, can you give us an idea of what you mean by frugal? Are you looking like $2 or less feeds 12? Like, what's your budget? And then maybe we can brainstorm that. Guys, if you have frugal side dish ideas for Thanksgiving, throw them in the comments. Packrat said, running a dehumidifier in an old house in East Nashville was imperative year-round to remove mold. Yep. Yeah, so humidifiers. So a lot of this construction project that is precipitated by me almost buying a whole house dehumidifier 2 years ago, and as I dug into how to keep your how to dehumidify, it told me that my research told me the first thing to do is find out why it's so humid.
Yeah.
And there was some factors adding to the humidity in my house. So I ended up going for the core underlying factor, which was find out if there was water under my house, and there was. And then we had to fix that. So that's fixed now. The humidity is better, but it's still like the earth contact brings humidity. The actual construction materials of my home bring humidity. Upgrading my windows has reduced humidity, and I will continue to upgrade windows. I'm just doing them as I can afford them. So now we're to the point where it's less of a problem, but it's still a problem because my house is still below grade. And there's nothing I can do about that except for bulldoze the house and build it higher, which is not going to happen. So, okay, we got $6 to $8 for 12 people for Thanksgiving side dish challenge. What say you, Tactical?
I have no idea.
He has no idea. So I'm going to preface this with, I don't have as good a view on grocery prices as I used to because I don't buy them as much, but I have noticed that they're higher. But a couple things that come to mind. One would be a root bake with some chev, and it just depends on, you just need a little bit of chev, like a little ball of chev. And that would be if you can get beets and turnips and maybe potatoes, maybe not, maybe some sweet potatoes, and cut those up with onions and garlic with chev. That makes a really nice side dish. It just depends on if those things are available in your grocery stores at reasonable prices. At this time of year, they can be. Another thing that's really popular is cranberry, like homemade cranberry relish, where you just do cranberry with orange and some. Oh, you already have Chev in your fridge. That's great. And a little bit of sugar if you want sugar. I add a shot of bourbon to that at the very end. I'll add garlic and cloves and that sort of thing. I don't do it with sugar. I just add an orange and a bag of cranberries, and then I put onions, garlic, stuff like that in there. So I kind of mix a savory with the sweet concept on the cranberry relish. I'm not sure if people at Thanksgiving would be like, that's a weird side dish though. So deviled eggs can be frugal. Yeah, that's a good one. So a dozen eggs and devil them will be under $6 to $8, even if you get the pasture raised. You just got to add, you know how to do that. That's a great side dish idea, Beth, Emily. I love it. I wasn't going to go there, but that was a good place to go. It could be a dessert too. So you could do bread pudding, which I know is totally not keto and totally not wheat, but bread puddings are really good. That requires eggs and bread and sweeteners and vanilla, and you're done. Maybe some cinnamon. I don't know if you have cinnamon, but you probably have cinnamon because you put cinnamon in your coffee. What else? Custard. A homemade custard would be good. You got to buy milk. Milk's about $4 a gallon, and then you thicken that however you thicken that. You can use cornstarch, you can use flour, you can use other thickeners. Cream cheese and olive mix on 4-inch celery logs. There you go. So hopefully this gets you thinking in a good direction, Jen. I'm sure, knowing you can get that done. You can totally get that done. Anyway, guys, looks like we're at the end of the show. I'm out of questions. If you like this show and want to support the work we're doing here at Living Free in Tennessee, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at Hollow Roast, even though I was drinking water the whole show. 2, consider becoming a member. We are going to schedule a final year webinar. It's going to be a longer one on the Power Pantry method. So that'll be coming in December. That is available for members. We'll also be selling it. You can find all that information at livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, guys, go out, make it a great